Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit Podcast. You've got Tanner and Corey here hanging out with you. Just a reminder, today's episode is brought to you by Pattern Ag. Predicting pest and pathogen risks in your field. Don't gamble with your yields. Go to www.pattern.ag today. Corey, this is going to be a good episode because there's a lot of questions around what regenerative practices are available. Why do we want to switch our farming from the way that we've always been doing it? And is there some way to incentivize me to make a switch?
Right. Yeah, we need incentive, right? Either monetary or for the greater good or, help us out in one way or another.
And we're not talking specifically carbon credits.
No.
That's not the point of the conversation. So it'll be fun to dive into this. Listeners, we thank you for joining us. Please hit subscribe if this is your first episode that you've picked up or you haven't done that yet. We appreciate that. Also, leave us a review. You can send us an email, farmforprofitllc@gmail.com. You can also send us a text message or a voicemail, 515-207-9640.
Yep, and if you're coming to the Farm Progress Show here in a week or two, come see us. We will be at Sukup Manufacturing in the morning and John Deere in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Recording. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, please do. Please come say hi and make sure you find us and come see what we've got going on. But remember, hit up our YouTube channel. We got kind of a unique piece of content over there. It's over a month now. We've had our safe video from Casey's out there, so it's kind of a fun little dramatic approach. But I don't think we need to hold them out of this conversation any longer. Let's dive into this. Our pleasure to have Dylan here with the Delong Co. And we're going to talk a little bit here about what they've got going on. Welcome to the podcast, Dylan.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be on and talk to you guys. Like I said before, I've been listening for a while now, so glad that we can connect and kind of talk about sustainable farming practices and where it's going in the future and also what's going on right now. So excited to talk.
I love that. So I look at your last name, and to me it looks like you stopped spelling vacation. How do you say your last name?
My last name is Vaca.
Vaca.
See how it said vacay.
Vacay,
It's going to vacay.
And what's your role with Delong Co? Is that how you say that as well? Delong Co?
Yeah. So basically, that's shortened for the Delong Company. But yeah, we shortened it to the Delong Co Inc. Is our official, business name. But what I do is basically the marketing side of it. As far as the marketing is the website, the branding, the social media. Talking with our customers and seeing what their story is and why they want to work with the Delong Company. And ultimately, the goal here is to build out this new product and brand that's entirely based on sustainable farming practices. And that's what we're going to get into here. But the Grown Climate Smart brand itself is kind of the brand that I manage. And, I have some teammates and colleagues that work with the brand too. But my role specifically is on that marketing side and, talking to interesting people like you and getting the word out there.
So who is the Delong Company Incorporated?
Yeah, so the Delong Company, it's a 6th generation family owned company. We're based out of Clinton, Wisconsin. It's about 40 minutes south of Madison. And we have, facilities all around the country that do, logistics, grain elevators, a whole bunch of things, within the agriculture field that, give us a really good insight into working with farmers in the field themselves and also, corporate buyers as well that, ultimately buy the ingredients and put it into a product and turn it into a CPG type of ordeal where it's actually sitting in the market. And so, being in the middle is a really cool space to be in, and we get to work with a lot of cool people.
So just for the listeners, I got their map pulled up of all their locations. Looks like you go from kind of like south central Wisconsin, eastern Wisconsin, down like southwest of Chicago, and then you actually have location in Omaha, down by Kansas City, and over in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, so just outside of Columbus and in Lockbourne, we have facilities out on the East Coast as well.
Yeah,
as far as New York. So it's a wide ranging facilities that the Delong Company has, and in the last couple of decades, it's been really cool to see the company kind of grow and kind of expand out to the coast like that, which ultimately help with exports and offer a different take on it and more possibility and bigger business to attract.
I didn't have my map expanded big enough.
You didn't get big enough.
No, I can see it now.
Because if I read correctly, Delong Co. is one of the largest agricultural exporters. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're actually you kind of read correctly. Yeah, we're the biggest agriculture exporter in the country. We're the number 4, I believe, the last time I checked, overall, as far as exporter. So as far as agriculture, ingredients, animal feed, things like that, we are the largest, yeah.
How did we not hear of them? Did you know?
I have no. I mean, I've maybe seen the name before, but no, I didn't know.
Well, Dylan's got his work cut out for him, Mr. Marketing and Branding.
Yeah.
So you guys are out in Iowa, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't, as far as grain elevators and everything, we don't really have as much as a footprint in Iowa, but hopefully someday we get out there and have a bigger footprint in that region. Yeah. But definitely in Wisconsin and Illinois and Michigan and everything, we're working our way out there. So it's been really cool to see the company expand and reach new heights.
Yeah. So I mean, our exporting would have to go to a rail or the river.
Yep.
Basically, and it would typically be probably a soybean or maybe we got a lot of ethanol type stuff. But yeah, right. we don't see the exporting side very much in Iowa.
Right. So why would a grain receiving business get involved with regenerative ag practices?
Yeah, so that kind of is the big question for our new venture and our new brand that we have here at the Delong Company. Why would farmers want to do that? Why would farmers be interested in sustainable farming practices? There's a whole wide range of things that why farmers would want to do it. And right now, there's just so many programs out there that are willing to, whether it's cost sharing programs, whether it's, fiscal year incentive plans. There's so many different plans out there, and the Delong Company is one of them with this Grown Climate Smart. Originally it started off with the Delong Company winning a grant through the USDA's Climate Smart Commodities program, and taking that money and spreading it out over 5 years. And basically what we're going to be doing is working with farmers to incentivize them and help them along, do these sustainable farming practices. In saying that, there's a lot of guys out there in the field that have been doing these practices for a long time now. So a little bit is, people that have been doing it for a while and it's nothing new to them. And then there's some people too that are, adopting new practices. So it's been really cool to work with people from both sides of it.
And that's what our listeners are going to know right away. They want us to ask, how does the rule of additionality play into this? Because Corey's already been strip tilling. Corey has already been doing some of these regenerative type practices that may qualify. Can I go backwards as a listener?
Yeah. So, and that's what's really cool about our program here is we've noticed with talking with guys out in the field and everything is that a lot of people feel left out because a lot of these programs really prioritize people and only let people in if it's something new to them, right? If it's a new adoption to them. Our program here is we're working with people that have been doing, strip till, no till, or any type of reduced till, for years now. And that's kind of what I was saying before is there's plenty of guys out there that have been doing it for, 10, 15 plus years. And, this program here allows them to be incentivized for it, on a per acre basis. And, we're more than willing to work with people that have been doing it and also people that are, thinking about doing it or transitioning into it. So in that sense, you don't have to necessarily work backwards and kind of, start over again. If you're already doing it, that's great. And we want to make sure those farmers feel appreciated just as much as someone that's, thinking about adopting those practices.
Interesting. So this is not, you said it's not a carbon credit?
No, our program doesn't have anything to do with carbon credits. And that's a common question is, hey, all these sustainability programs, a lot of times they have to do with these carbon credits but ours, no, it's specifically based on, specific sustainable practices that we have found that will basically lower greenhouse gas emissions, helps the soils and the water and everything like that. So no, it's not related to anything with carbon credits, but it kind of does go hand in hand also with other programs that do offer a carbon credit.
And so when you say we have found, are you guys actually doing your own research on this kind of stuff, or using university research, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so basically for all the practices and all the data that we provide to the USDA, it's all based on state NRCS practice standards. So when we're talking to farmers and talking to growers on the ground, it's basically how we verify that they're doing these practices and the rules they abide by is through their NRCS office and the rules that they have set in place for those practices. We're not necessarily involved with them or they're not involved in our program per se. But as far as each practice's guidelines and kind of the data that we find and kind of base our estimates on comes from what the NRCS says these cover crops do or this reduced or a no-till does. So that's kind of how we're pulling data from initially. But saying that, the more people we get enrolled into our program, the more data over time we're going to be able to pull from ourselves. And I think it's going to be really cool and a really unique experience over these next 5 years here where we work with people across 11 different states, doing a whole one of 4 at least different practices and kind of seeing the data that comes from that will be really interesting.
Yeah, so what are these practices? Is it standard cover crops, no-till, or is it more granularly divided up than that?
No, so as far as the practices themselves, we basically have cover crops, and we basically allow numerous amounts of species as cover crops, different seed rates. The second practice would be under our tillage management practice. So under that, you have the reduced till or the no-till. So you can be either or, as long as it's not like a conventional till with a moldboard plow or something like that. The third practice would be a nutrient management plan, and then the fourth one would be windbreak establishments or renovations. So we're working with farmers that are doing at least one of those, but they're more than welcome to. And there's plenty of guys out there that are doing 2, 3, even 4 practices, which is awesome to see.
So you can stack them. So I could
Right.
no-till into cover crops and get paid for both practice.
Right. Correct. Yeah, and that's the cool thing is everybody has different rotations, and if you're going corn to beans or something like that, right? You are able to stack them and stack those cover crops, and a lot of times, like what you said, a lot of people are able to stack that tillage and the cover crops together because it works well.
I'm just looking at their website right now at grownclimatesmart.com. Is that right? I think that's right.
Yep. Yeah, that's our website.
There is 10 applications. Looks like you can do for a bunch of stuff. Who's managing this? Are you going through the USDA or NRCS with this, or it's just all in-house?
Well, so the Delong company is administering the program. Basically on a quarterly basis, we report back to the USDA and give, insights on the data that we're collecting and who we have enrolled and kind of, more so what practices are popular, kind of the barriers to entry to some of them. So ultimately, the USDA, through this Climate Smart Commodities grant, came up with the funding and everything for it. But the really cool thing, I think, is they realized that, the partnerships and the relationship that private companies and commercial companies have with growers and their customer base is very strong knit. So they're allowing us, to work with farmers, and ultimately it's on, us and our team here to verify that they're doing these practices. So we'll be going out and, out to people's land and making sure they're doing these practices. And so it's a little of both, but I would say the Delong company and specifically our Grown Climate Smart team, is working very closely with the growers and also with the USDA on that.
So there's millions of acres that are available, like that are no-tilling, or like I've got a nutrient management plan. I got that form pulled up. Can I just fill this out and send it to you, or how do I get in, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so basically, it's you fill out an initial application. You say, hey, I'm doing these practices, or I want to do these practices. And you fill out that initial sheet. We take it, we look at it, and say, okay, you're good to go. And we send you basically a practice-specific enrollment form where you say, hey, I'm doing, these amount of acres of no-till on this specific land. And from there, you would fill out, your farm ID, your track ID, basically all the information that you go in when you go into like a FSA office and you go certify your land or your crops. As long as you get that paperwork, and they have kind of those aerial shots of your land, and they have, the track ID and the farm ID next to it, it's rather simple as far as, filling it out. And saying that a lot of the heavy lifting is at the very beginning, right? When you're signing up and giving us some of your information and describing who you are. But going from there, basically it's an annual enrollment, and you basically just say, next year and the year after, you're saying, hey, I'm doing the same practice, or I'm doing a new practice, or I'm adding on a practice on the same land, or I want to enroll more acres, and you basically just fill out that enrollment. And hopefully the process is a lot quicker. I mean, that's definitely one of the things that we thought about and currently are still working through is how do we make it less laborsome for a grower to get that paperwork, fill it out, make it easy for them. Because we do realize, no one likes, spending time and filling out the paperwork. And that's usually the hang up with a lot of people, right, is that they don't necessarily want to sit down and spend 2-3 hours putting in farm IDs and track IDs and doing all that. So,
right.
We really try to make an important, a lot of effort, I guess, to make it easier for the grower.
I can tell you right now, the forms that I'm looking at here look way easier than any government form that I've filled out to farm.
So that's
part of it. We have someone specifically for the documentation of it, and he's been working really hard on trying to make it easier for farmers to put their information in there and convey what they're doing, and ultimately for us to incentivize them for it. So he's been working hard and trying to do his best as far as making it easier for everybody involved here.
So what about Corey filling out this form? Is it only for this crop year? Is it too late to sign up for this crop year?
It is too late. So this says after June 1st or July 1st.
But he can't go back and do, he's had a nutrient management plan for 15 years.
Right. So basically, for that one, the enrollment for 3 of the 4 practices, we've kind of closed up already just because of the sheer amount of interest we've had and the availability to fill up the program. Saying that, we do realize, let's take cover crops, for instance. Someone might go out and plant those out in the fall. So we're still enrolling cover crops right now and talking to growers. And, depending on the weather you guys have gotten, and I'm sure it's very similar to us, it's been in Wisconsin here, but it's been very dry. So, talking to people about cover crops might not be, the most interesting thing to them right now, but, it is worthwhile, we feel, and hopefully, ultimately, hopefully it ends up, getting more yield for them. But, for the cover crops, if they plant it in the fall, we're still incentivizing you for 2023 for this year. So as long as you administer that practice this current year, that's what you get incentivized for. So, you know, next year we'll start enrolling again for that year. So yes, everything that you would enroll for this year would be
But you can't go backwards.
You know, you get incentivized this year.
So is it first come, first serve then?
Yeah, it is first come, first serve. You know, and that's part of the program is we've done a great amount of outreach of you know, social media and website and sending out postcards and making phone calls. You know, we've done a lot of outreach and we give everybody the opportunity to sign up, and you know, it's first come, first serve in that regard.
And you got this grant that's funding all of this, and then you guys split it out between 5 years, and then are you like allocating funds to the no-till bucket and to the nutrient management bucket and all that?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, each specific practice has its own bucket of funding, I guess you would say, and they have their own, you know, incentive amounts. Through a lot of due diligence and research into, you know, when we were first writing up this grant proposal is, you know, how much does it cost to implement cover crops? How much does it cost to implement, you know, a nutrient management plan versus, you know, tillage? So that's why those per acre incentives are different in a sense, because, you know, for the cover crops, we realize that it costs more to buy that seed, you know, spend the time planting it. And, you know, that's why the rates are a little bit different depending on each specific practice. But you're right, every single, you know, one of those 4 practices has a different, you know, bucket full of funding for it.
Can you give us an example of what some of these practices pay?
Sure. So for our program right now for 2023, we're enrolling people that, you know, do cover crops is at $50 an acre. The reduced or no-till is at $20 an acre. The nutrient management plan is at $19 an acre. And then those windbreaks, the establishing windbreaks or renovating a windbreak is at $20 an acre as well.
$20 an acre, like of the actual windbreak, or that the windbreak is affecting?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because we get that a lot, and a lot of people, you know, say, okay, how many acres is my windbreak actually affecting, right? And how many are they actually protecting? And there's a whole formula for it, and you know, I wish I could remember off the top of my head, but there's an actual formula to go by, you know, how tall your windbreaks are, how long they are, you know, and how many acres or feet, I guess, or yardage they actually protect. So with the windbreaks, it's kind of hard to tell, you know, it's a lot less black and white as far as, hey, I'm doing, you know, 200 acres of reduced tills compared to, you know, I have a tree line, and we don't really know until we run the formula on it.
Well, right now it sounds way better than
Carbon
credits and all the hoops you got to jump through. I want to know what's the catch. I mean,
the catch is they run out of money.
Yeah,
it's full.
And that's something too that, you know, hopefully throughout time we can, you know, get more funding or allow more growers to join, because we ultimately, you know, we want to incentivize more growers and capture more carbon, or you know, from the earth, right? And I guess the general idea here is that we want to increase the soil health by reducing the amount of carbon let out, and all these practices have shown that you know, they play a factor in that. So hopefully over time we can you know, onboard more growers and you know, get more acres in here. You know, for 2023 right now we're sitting at just about, you know, over 200,000 acres in this program. So hopefully in the future we can continue to grow it and you know, be leaders in it.
It says the first bullet point on this Climate Smart Commodities program application: cannot receive federal funds for an incentive practice on acres you wish to enroll. So you can't double dip in that sense.
Meaning you can't get your cover crop dollars from.
But what if you're already enrolled in carbon programs? Are those all government funds?
So usually they're not. If you're doing a carbon credit program, usually the discrepancy on that is if it's, you know, ultimately backed or government funded. And you're right, they don't want you to double dip on funds. And it's not only double dipping on funds per se, it's also double dipping on data, right? If we incentivize it and pull the amount of acres and how many, acres you're doing for that specific practice or anything, we don't want to also, report back data that other people are reporting back, and then the data skewed. So that's an important part of it to be accurate and, really just remain, I guess, doing the program the right way and incentivizing people that have the opportunity for it.
So what happens after 5 years?
Yeah, so after 5 years, the ultimate goal here is that, ultimately when, funding runs out for it or something, we're able to drive a premium for the grain coming from this program, right? If you think of it as a food label, there's different food labels out there that if you go to the grocery store and they have products and they have different types of labels.
Right, they've got Enviro Smart Beef.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, right. So the ultimate goal is, we're able to drive a premium from this grain, and ultimately we have a product that, that is sustainably grown and sourced, and then we can work with, end customers down the stream that ultimately can label it such and ultimately charge a premium for it, given that it was sourced a lot better than some other grains.
So how soon will you know that that's a viable option? Are we talking the end of next year? Because it doesn't take 5 years. Doesn't take that long. The podcast has been here for 4 years, and that flew by.
I was just gonna say I was just listening to your 4-year podcast the video that came out for it, and I saw you guys were saying, and it might not reach air, but obviously it did.
It did.
So congrats on that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it doesn't ultimately need to take 5 years, right? We're talking with a lot of people right now as far as, buyers from us and that have products, out in the marketplace already, and talking about how we can get this logo on some of the food and some of the products, whether it be animal feed, whether it be, distilleries. There's a lot of options to go and a lot of routes to go with. So you're right. It might not take 5 years. And from a marketing side, I hope it doesn't take 5 years. I hope it's sooner, and that we see that label and that logo on, a bunch of different things out in the market. And ultimately it validates, our program and what we're doing. So I think it's really interesting.
So you're going to make, so the farmers are making money on the incentive, on the payments per acre, but then after 5 years or before 5 years, you're going to hopefully have a premium on the grain that you are selling, not the farmers. Do you think eventually that will trickle down to the farmers? There won't have to be that payment, and you'll be able to pay them an incentive?
Right. Yeah, that's the ultimate goal here, is hopefully it trickles down and gets back to the grower. It's just right now there's not as much of a market for it or demand for it. But, when you think about how big sustainability is right now for companies and larger corporate companies, in a sense that, they want their supply chains to be more resilient and more sustainable. So we're really trying to offer an option for them to really, be a part of that and offer a product that can, ultimately, be something that they're confident in, and, we can co-market with them and be, a provider of grain that ultimately gets put into some really amazing products.
I was just thinking about the Tar Heel farmer and his ear corn that he sells for deer feed and squirrel feed. Mm-hmm. I think he needs to rebrand as Grown Climate Smart, so that way those people feeding the squirrels in their backyards know that at least one environmentally friendly practice was done while you grew that ear corn.
Yeah, no, exactly. Hey, we're open to it. We're talking with a lot of people right now, and like I said, if we have to connect the dots here, we're more than willing to. And there's plenty of things out there. I was just looking at earlier with other projects that are within the CSC, this Climate Smart Commodities grant, or that are doing these practices that end up being in bird seed and a bunch of stuff. So like I said, distilleries, I mean, there's so many routes to it, and so many different customers want sustainable, ingredients and products. And I think it's just a big thing right now. So it's been really cool to be a part of it. And hopefully in 5 years or 3 years or 2 years, it's less of a niche thing and it's more the norm, right? I don't think, the amount of people doing these practices is going to go down. It's only going to go up with programs like us and different companies requiring this and wanting to build it out more.
So the whole carbon thing we've been trying to sort out for the last couple of years, and I felt like we've made a decent effort at trying to do it. It's still confusing to me. It seems like there's a lack of standardization of things. Is that the reason that you guys chose not to go the carbon route?
Yeah, so for right now, you're 100% right. It's very complex. It's a very long-term, long-range type of thing, right? When we talk about carbon credits, sometimes it takes, 10 to 15 years for stuff to register, and then you have to, you're almost backdating things. Saying that, we do see the, potential of carbon markets, and it's something that we've looked into and are looking into and seeing if it's something that we can build out ourselves, or if it's partnering with someone to help us build it out, or offer another type of product that ultimately helps the grower. I think is a great thing. So maybe in the future it's something that we get into, or we work cross-functionally with someone that does it, to kind of be the middleman of our growers and customers, and ultimately the carbon market. But you're right, it's a complex marketplace. The changes, the price of it is always changing. So it's not the easiest thing for people just to jump into.
Yeah, a lot of commitments, a lot of contracts. You did say the other thing on the carbon is it seems like you almost get paid a year or two after the fact that you did it. How does the payment process work with this?
Yeah, so the payment process is the year of that you enroll, right? So, we were enrolling people for 2 to 3 months before, today. And like I said, we're still enrolling people for cover crops because we realize, people don't plant cover crops till, I think the NRCS standard is maybe the first or second week of November. That is the last accepted day for a certified cover crop. So there's still plenty of time out there to enroll those. So yeah, like I said, it's you enroll this year and you get paid in Q4 this year. So it's not a long-ranging thing, and like I said about earlier, it's really nice because it's an annual enrollment thing. So every year, someone has the decision to make: should I re-enroll? Should I enroll this year? You're not locked in for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. It's an annual thing. So if it works out for you and you really, you like that incentive at the end of the year, then this is a great program for you. But for whatever reason, if it's a dry year and you really just didn't like those cover crops, or that reduced till didn't really provide yields that you thought it would, you don't necessarily have to enroll the next year. So there's a lot of flexibility from the consumer or from the farmer side of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to put myself in our listeners' shoes, and there's got to be incentive through a strong possibility that this grain marked environmentally smart or climate smart grown that provides Delong Company a incentive to put all this work in, to hire Dylan, to continue to promote. And then the second question in my mind, just to push a little deeper, is why reach out as a way to introduce yourself to the podcast audience when the program's already full?
Yeah, so like I said before, there's really no priority as far as people that enroll. And I think a big issue here is that, there's so many programs out there and so many different practices that get, ultimately into this Climate Smart Commodities grant. I think the end goal here should be to ultimately, hopefully unify with a lot of these different practices and come up with a more broad term or, generalization of what these sustainable practices do. So part of this outreach is just, saying, hey, we're doing this and we want to partner with other people, and hopefully throughout time, we can be one of the leaders and, work with more growers and more different, different programs that do the same thing. And hopefully, we can get more growers and incentivize more people throughout time.
Nice. I'm trying to think, how do you, when you go and get this label, is it there's not going to be like a difference between something that, I guess when you take it to like the science level, this kernel of corn is probably scientifically the same as this kernel of corn that had a windbreak by it, right? Like there's probably not different. So you have to like shut down a plant to take that corn at someday, or do you just get X amount of bushels, or how does that work?
So yeah, it's usually like an X amount of bushels. It's basically, this program's run through a mass balance sheet. So basically, the logistics and the price point of trying to, build out a whole, identity for this specific grain would be, be so much. But through this program, through the mass balance sheet, we are able to average out, how much sustainable grain we're taking in, and ultimately where it goes. And part of it is tracking where it goes, right? And who it ultimately ends up in whose hands, right? So you're right. Right now, there's not much of a market for it, but hopefully over time we kind of build that out and can be a leader in it.
Yeah, it's the same thing I think of as organic corn versus regular corn. You put a kernel next to each other, and they look a lot of the same, but there's also some pretty severe penalties for those that try to pass off conventionally grown.
Yeah. But that they can test, right? Whether it's organic or not, or whether it's had been sprayed with Roundup or that has that trait in it. This physically doesn't have that. You guys dealt with that with non-GMO soybeans.
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, that was a racket in itself. But it's fascinating to know that this is one avenue that the USDA is investing in incentivizing the way to grow crops using the practices that they identify. And I know there's research and science behind it, but I know we have a portion of our podcast listeners that would argue that it's just the government trying to push a motive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I totally get that. And there's been other programs out there that do sustainability, or we've talked to plenty of people that have been in other programs, but a part of this program is taking in that grain and making sure that these farmers are doing these practices and incentivizing them for it, but also the traceability aspect of it is a big part of it, and hopefully this program and other alike ones ultimately end up being successful, and be less government backed as far as saying, hey, the government's watching over me doing these practices, and a lot of farmers kind of get a little nervous about that. But hopefully this program doesn't ultimately convey that idea and shows that a grower's commercial partners and private company like the Delong Company is really here to help them and if needed, walk them through the practices and what's best for their specific land.
Is there other companies that are participating in these grants and private ways?
Yeah. So the Climate Smart Commodities grant was, I think it was $3 billion in total, and it was wide ranging from cattle farmers to forestry to agriculture like us that do corn, soybeans, rye, oat, wheat. So there's plenty of programs out there, and ultimately, they incentivize some practices that we incentivize. There's other programs that incentivize different, practices. There's some that, incentivize, like I said before, forestry or cattle or beef or something like that. So there's a whole bunch of different ones. But the Delong Company was one of, I think, the first, in group one of funding, I think 70 total, for that initial funding. So being in group one, we really got a head start on it, and, was able to build out this brand and talk to some of our customers and growers out there and get them enrolled here.
Well, I certainly applaud it because it seems like it's kind of a path to carbon credits, but it seems like a much simpler way to get to the same result.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it too is working with, partners, whether it's, we have multiple partners of the program that, they're ethanol plant partners. There's, grain collaboratives. There's groups like Practical Farmers of Iowa is one of our strategic partners of the group. So it's really just getting a lot of people involved from whole different, backgrounds, whether it be, ingredient based or, an ethanol plant. There's so many possibilities to work with different strategic partners, ultimately with this end goal of being more sustainable.
I like that. So I got a couple quick questions. Is this on specific crops? Is it just corn and soybeans, or what types of crops can qualify?
Yeah, so it's corn, soybeans, rye, oats, alfalfa. There's a whole bunch of different things. And we totally get part of the program is, we're incentivizing growers in 11 different states, and we totally realize that. A grower in Iowa or, Minnesota or Illinois is way different than a grower or a farmer in New York, right? Just based off the land, based off the soil type. So that's why we kind of, have different practices for different, commodities that ultimately could be attributed to this program.
And then my next question was, can a grower cap? If Corey's got 25,000 acres and conventionally farms it and decides he's going to switch to strip till or a reduced tillage practice, can he register all 25,000, or are we capped somewhere?
So, that's part of there's no, priority list on big growers or small growers, but a grower can't necessarily cap. And we have, a numerous handful of growers that are larger scale that do, 5, 8, 10,000 acres in the program. But what's been really cool is we also see farmers that do, they're part-time and do 80 acres, or they do 220 acres, right? So our program is a wide ranging as far as average, farm size. So no, you don't necessarily cap at an acreage. It's just, every acre or every practice has an acre incentive and an amount of acres for each practice. But saying that, what's really cool is we do also kind of put a focus on small growers. So if you meet a certain amount of criteria, you can be listed as a small grower and even get another incentive based on that as well. So that's been a really cool thing to see, is that, it's not like we're filling up the program with huge, big growers, and it's not like we have, only little guys too. It's been a wide ranging of, like I said, 100-acre farms to 10,000-acre farms. So
nice. Well, this could be an interesting option for our listeners for next year, or those that are going to do cover crops this fall.
Yeah. And, we're making our way out to Iowa, and, we're making our way to multiple shows. And I know you guys mentioned you'll be at the Commodity Classic as well, but we'll be there. And, we're still, I think, all of a month and a half, maybe 10 months or 10 weeks old. So we're really just getting the name out there and trying to get the word to people and growers that this is a viable option. And, a lot of times growers might be right on the fence on doing some of these practices. And hopefully this incentive kind of gets them, over the bump and kind of encourages them, hey, I'm going to try it out. And we're not really incentivizing or really going out there and measuring, a cover crop plant if it's 2 inches off the ground or 4 inches off the ground, right? We really just want to, have that proof of practice that you're ultimately doing the practice and trying it, and hopefully that produces better yields for you.
Nice.
If they want to sign up or learn more, what's the best process to do that?
Yeah, so you can, you can go to our website, grownclimatesmart.com. We have a Facebook page, Grown Climate Smart. you can basically find us on all social medias. Our website, you can call into our DeLong, company, office, and they'll get you to us. Like I said, there's 3 of us, and we're more than willing to talk with farmers. We're more than willing to come out to grower meetings. We've been making the rounds this past 2 months. So, I would say the website or calling in or anything like that, or talking to your local DeLong rep if you're already working with DeLong. They'll obviously know about the program and refer you to us.
Cool. Well, I'm going to do a little bit here to summarize what we talked about today. While I do that, be thinking about the answer to our payoff question. If you could go back and stand next to yourself at age 18, what would you do, or what would you go back and say? So we had Dylan, not vacation. We had Dylan Vaca here from the DeLong Company Incorporated to tell us a little bit about their Grown Climate Smart program, a program that actually pays cash for some conservation practices that Corey's been doing all along and didn't qualify for as far as carbon credits goes. They incentivize cover crops, reduced tillage practices, nutrient management plans, and windbreak establishments or renovations. DeLong is a 6th-generation family-owned business with more than 38 grain, seed, and agronomy locations throughout the country. Even got a couple on the East Coast, as far as we discovered. They are the largest U.S. exporter in containerized ag products, and they've got over 200,000 acres already signed up that are sustainably farmed in their program. So if this is a program that you'd like to get into, you need to take a look at it for when the enrollment dates start, and it's first come, first serve. Could be $50 an acre for cover crops, $20 an acre for some reduced tillage practices, $19 and $20 again respectively for nutrient management strategies and windbreak projects. But it's a key program to help incentivize farmers to make a switch if they're on the edge, or incentivize those that have already been doing these climate smart farming practices. So it was a blast to have them here. They're funded by a USDA grant that covers the 5 years. So if you're interested, you should probably get in now and not wait. So Dylan, what would you go back and tell yourself at age 18?
I would tell myself, don't ever turn down an opportunity or something that you don't really know much about. Being able to work with farmers every day and people in the agriculture world, you get to meet some really exciting people and really interesting people and learn a lot. So it's been an enjoyable experience, and hopefully we'll continue to work with some great people and talk to great people like you guys, and we'll keep spreading the word. Awesome.
Good answer. You going to challenge them before we send them off?
Yeah. It's a pretty simple one. Go to grownclimatesmart.com. If you've ever been on the fence or interested in doing this stuff, or even if you're already doing it, this seems like a pretty good option to maybe get your foot in the door, especially if you don't like doing it on the government side or the carbon credit side of things. So check it out.
Well, Dylan, thanks a lot for joining us. We really appreciate you reaching out and sharing the DeLong Company and Grown Climate Smart with us, and now we get to share it with our listeners.
Yep. No, sounds good. I thank you guys for having me on, and it was great talking with you. And like I said, hopefully we'll reconnect with some of these shows here, and I'm sure we'll see each other down the line here.
Absolutely. And Corey, until next time, I'm going to tell our listeners to have a good one.
Yep.